reaching the closing remarks. And in all fairness, we couldn't have you already know who's speaking, right? But there was no way that we were going to and the Rural Maryland Council was going to just hand the mic over to the comptroller and just go, great, close it out. And the only reason is because you all really do have to know, many of you already do, but for those of you that don't, this gentleman, if not the biggest, is one of the biggest supporters, not only of Maryland, but especially of rural Maryland that we've ever had. We've had the comptroller come and speak to the Rural Maryland Council in the past. We thought about, he was right on the top of the list when the committee got together about who we wanted to speak. And at first, and I'll be honest with you, we had him kind of further up in the agenda. But we always like to save the closing remarks for like our biggest champion, or one of our biggest champions. And we said, we actually asked him if he would please close it out, and he was so gracious and said yes, he would do whatever we asked, or as long as it fit into his schedule, and he did. We've had a chance as the Rural Maryland Council and many of us in the room to work with Comptroller Francho for a number of years. The thing that always amazes me, of course, he's from Montgomery County, he's from Tacoma Park area, not exactly rural, but there is nobody that travels the state more and knows exactly what's going on, whether it's in southern Maryland, way out in western Maryland, the eastern shore. He is always out, not only like just supporting us here in Annapolis, but knowing the very projects that many of us work on, knowing what's going on. It is, Charlotte and I were just talking out in the hall, and as you know, the Rural Maryland Council, we are not partisan at all. We don't even know what RD, we do not discuss that kind of stuff. When we get in our meetings, we have a very large board, whether it's our executive committee, because it's all about what we're doing for the citizens. And there is no better person that exemplifies that in Annapolis than Peter Francho. And that's why we love when you come to speak to us, because you are from the heart, you know what we're doing, you are out late at night, I know. I happen to know his deputy very well, who's my neighbor and a dear friend, and I know he's always out late at night and always traveling the state. Usually I actually see Len in the morning when I'm going to work, and he might be coming back, because he's just traveling back to Easton. So I thank you for all you do. I know everybody here thanks you. The Rural Maryland Council couldn't ask for a better friend, and thank you so much for taking your time to come and close out our Rural Summit this year.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. That's a very generous introduction. I probably don't deserve it. I'm here because I'm lucky enough to be your comptroller. You guys pay my salary. It's a fabulous job. Get to travel around the state. Get to scare people because I'm the tax collector. By the way, are those tax exempt, I hope, those awards? But I'm so happy to join these four companies in getting these checks because, I often am asked, what do we need to do in Maryland? And economically, for the next few years, we need to focus like a laser on putting more money in the pockets of Maryland's small businesses. It's not just, thank you. Yeah, no, this, 70%, we're the richest state in the country, according to the Wall Street Journal. We have a $80,760 average family median income, which is terrific. We're number one compared to California and New Jersey, New York, all these big states. But we have a lot of challenges. In fact, some people are not participating in the prosperity that our country right now is experiencing. 70% of the state's GDP comes from consumer spending. So this is not altruistic when I say we need to focus on putting more cash in the pockets of Maryland small businesses. This is in our self-interest. This is what's going to allow us to support the kinds of businesses that both employ our friends and neighbors and pay living wages, but it's crucial that we do it to keep our prosperity going. So I'm going to give to each of the companies that were honored here one of my much coveted comptroller medallions. These aren't worth anything, but I'm told that if you get pulled over by the state police, they might help. I don't know. But could I get you, the winner, come up and the three second place finishers? Thank you very much. It's a complete knockoff of Louis Goldstein, but his were plastic. Mine are a real thing. Yep. Thank you very much. And yeah. Thank you, guys, and thank you for what you represent. And Scott, thank you again for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here to close out the summit. I know you've got a little bit of a social occasion. I obviously am very grateful for the leadership and advocacy that you provide on behalf of Maryland's rural communities. Scott is right. I spend a great deal of time outside the I-95 corridor, traveling throughout western Maryland, southern Maryland, the eastern shore, as well as Cecil, Carroll, and Harford counties. It is those communities that have maintained Maryland's historic and agricultural heritage. It's on your main streets in those areas that I can really assess what's happening in what I call the real Maryland economy. So much of what we deal with in politics is a rear view mirror looking at data from last tax year. It's good to get out on the front lines often and listen to people that have good things to say, but also challenges. I don't need to tell you that in many parts of our state, particularly our rural communities, there continues to be a great need for permanent, high-paying jobs and new investments. As the state's chief fiscal officer, I strongly believe that we need to devote as much time, attention, and investment to rural communities as we do to the communities in the Baltimore and Washington regions. Our state's economic future will be even stronger if we ensure that our rural communities have family-supporting jobs, adequate health care, transportation options, and technological infrastructures like broadband internet access. For me, it's not just about fighting for rural Maryland, although I love that, or frankly, urban Maryland or suburban Maryland. It's about fighting for one Maryland, whether you live in Rockville or Towson, Crisfield, Cumberland, or Waldorf. We need to make sure that we provide access to high quality, affordable higher education, training programs, and apprenticeships so that all Marylanders have the education, skills, and training they need to compete in an ever-changing global economy. We need to make sure that government is making it easier, not harder, for businesses of all sizes to grow and succeed in Maryland by creating regulatory tax climates that allow these enterprises to create jobs and generate economic activity and revenue our state. We're doing something good. These folks here are Maryland companies. They're owned by Marylanders. They will eventually employ Marylanders. They will use Maryland agricultural products. They will pay our friends and neighbors living wages. And that money is so crucial to the functioning of our state's wonderful, prosperous economy. There is a lot of good news currently. The stock market's doing well. We have historic unemployment rates, low. Our labor force is strong. We're seeing finally some modest wage growth. While this is good news for a lot of Marylanders and Americans, we cannot deny the fact that the nation's economy and our own state economy is working for some terrifically well. Not so good for many of our fellow Marylanders. So, what do we need to do? We need to focus like a laser, as I said, on small businesses. We need to include the rural areas as well as the urban and suburban areas. Economic inequality continues to grow, and with the continued trend towards automation and globalization of the American economy, far too many people are not benefiting from the system. And trust me, automation and globalization are not going away. So we need to be nimble. We need to be creative, entrepreneurial, innovative. So that's why I love this, both organization and this particular award. Small businesses, unfortunately, are being squeezed out of existence by tax policy, regulatory policy, and the onslaught of e-commerce. I'll just mention e-commerce. It's like holding back a river. We're never going to protect economic protectionism of our incumbent small businesses from having to compete with the internet. Just have to make sure they have some of the resources so they can compete. And they will. But we can't put our head in the sand. So we have to realize that this is going on inevitably. Here's the problem. Consumers are accruing in Maryland debt at a faster rate than they're putting money away in savings and retirement. Those are figures and data that we actually have. And it's very upsetting to me because you know how much financial insecurity produces unhappiness, period. To put it more simply, many people cannot afford to pay for the fundamental building blocks of success and security, whether it's health care, college, or technological resources. Federal government, wow, good luck with the federal government. Our national debt continues to grow at an absolutely unsustainable pace, and the ongoing political gridlock really threaten, I think, our nation's long-term economic and fiscal situation. That's why we here in Maryland must maintain the economic and fiscal path that we've created, one that supports small businesses, encourages the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit of the private sector. Yes, we need to regulate the private sector, but no, we don't have to stand in the way all the time. It's happening but we get kind of dragged kicking and screaming. I don't know whether there were a lot of legislators here. Yes, I do see a couple, I guess, who are still with us, but we need to exercise fiscal restraint as we make tough decisions on how best to spend the hard-earned tax dollars of our citizens, but we need to get that relationship between regulators and what I call the genius of the private sector, be it in rural or suburban or urban areas. We need to get it straight. Right now it's out of whack in Maryland. You know, we in the public sector are constantly dipping in and saying, this is our really good idea about what you guys should do. It's not the best use of the free enterprise system. And I was a legislator for 20 years, so I don't have clean hands, trust me. So I'm especially proud we've been able to accomplish some of this with Governor Hogan and the legislative leaders, but we have a long way to go in fundamental reform of the state's economy, fiscal policy, and frankly, the politics of the state are sufficiently out of whack that we need to adjust them. You know, most of our young people don't join my party. I'm a Democrat because they don't think we're fiscally responsible. Most of the millennials don't like the Republicans either because they see them as too harsh on social issues. So they're unenrolled. We have about 1 million of them right now in Maryland. Not allowed to vote in the primaries. Really? And this is where the major decisions are made as to who represents us in Annapolis and Congress. 1 million of our best people. No, sorry. You can only vote after the decision's been made. So you get my point. I obviously don't want to be pessimistic, but I will mention the dysfunction and toxicity that have become far too common in our political discourse. So on that happy note, let me just close by saying I love being a strong partner for you. I am a advocate for the needs and interests of rural Maryland. I mentioned that over the next 2 to 3 years, I will be focusing on putting more cash in more Maryland businesses' pockets. Any of you like Maryland cold beer? Maryland craft beer? Trust me, that's almost $1 billion worth of economic activity. Made in Maryland, owned by Maryland, employs Marylanders, uses Maryland agricultural products. I mean, it's just too good to be true. And distilleries and wineries, I'm also recommending in the agricultural areas because that's another $1 billion in economic activity. It could be $8 billion if we just got out of their way and let them be creative in making their own products in Maryland and selling to Marylanders. The economic return is obviously just so much more compelling than buying something over the internet. So I look forward to working together with you in many years ahead as we work to bring jobs, opportunities, and investments to your communities. Thank you for putting up with me. God bless you, and always stay in touch with us. And my congrats again to the small businesses represented here. Thank you.
Before you leave, I have a gift for you. Here, let me step up here.
Yeah, please.
To give you some liquid refreshment.
Oh, boy.
And I'd like to mention that I first met you at the Charles County Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. And you mentioned being the first person who knows how the economy's going. The way that we find out what's happening in our Amish community is by the sales taxes that they are paying. Otherwise, we'd probably be somewhat clueless. So we really appreciate you here in Southern Maryland, and come down and visit us anytime.
So I don't sell out cheap, but Maryland wine, that's good. Thank you very much. And, grateful.
Thank you very much.